Hi, again. One of the things that we wanted to talk about was our personal finance journeys and kind of how we got to where we are. We want to kind of just pop the bubble on anybody who thinks that like off the bat we were like really good with finances, because we both had different experiences growing up. Both of our parents had different philosophies with money that we had to talk about and work through in our own way. We just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about each of our stories and the way that we grew up thinking about money to how we got to where we are now.
So I grew up in a home that handled money very interestingly. I'm very grateful for my parents, very grateful for the way that I was able to grow up. It was a huge blessing. Very grateful that we both grew up like that. But I will say money was like a taboo topic in my family because we lived this one lifestyle with, very extreme, but then there would always be this like tension of, oh, don't talk about buying a house or getting a car or things that maybe had like a bigger price tag on it. I didn't really recognize this until I was out of my parents' home, how there was like, okay, well, we'll go out to eat all the time, or we will buy all these new clothes, or we'll have the latest this and that, but yet these bigger financial purchases weren't able to happen. And now being an adult, I understand it's because money was spent over here and not saved for here. Money was just something we didn't really talk about. And then when I was in high school, we actually ended up having to sell the house that I grew up in. It was my junior year and we had to move. And it was because of poor financial stewardship. And that really rocked my world. My sisters were younger than me. The house that we had grown up in, that we had known Lakeland as, we had to get rid of. I went to college. I had a budget. My parents helped me make a plan. They said they didn't want me to make the mistakes that they did and set me up for success. But my second year into college, things just got really crazy. My parents got divorced. There was really like no accountability. Like in a divorce, like finances are absolutely crazy, and so kind of this like security blanket was gone for me, and I just was on my own. It was in that year that I racked up a lot of credit card debt, which was terrible, and I spent years and years and years trying to pay off, and I just dug myself a really big hole. And Drew and I did interns. We would hear these financial classes about setting a budget and paying off debt and 401ks, and every time I was in one of those classes, I felt so guilty and I felt so ashamed because my finances were terrible, and I didn't feel like I could go to anyone and say, I have $3,000 in credit card debt and I have no way to pay it off. Like, I'm taking out student loans just to be here. I was just carried around a lot of shame for what I was doing. One of the hardest days of my life was having to tell Drew how much credit card debt I had. Coming from someone who had like no debt and was really good at savings, I didn't have a savings account until I was married. My personal finances were a mess. One of the first things that we did in marriage was pay off my credit card debt, which I had gotten down to about $1,500. That all came from the savings account that Drew had from high school through college. Marriage is a beautiful thing. It is an example of Jesus in the church, and so I hate that I brought debt into marriage, but also it really was this beautiful example to me that like Drew paid a debt mine that he didn't have to, and that was because he loved me, and that was for me just like such a representation of like how Jesus loves us. I say all this to say there's hope. Like, I came into our marriage negative. I did not steward things well. I didn't know how to save, and we're only 16 months married and my finances look totally different now. There is hope for you.
Growing up, kind of similarly to Chelsea, I didn't really have any major conversations about money with my family. It wasn't as taboo that I think yours might have been, but there were certain things that like I didn't really get an explanation for in the way that I wanted. So a little background on the way that my brain works. Ever since I was a kid, I was always really, really interested in not necessarily things as a whole, but the way they work. My mom said when I was like 3, I would take toys apart and like look at everything, and I just like have done that forever, and I like still do that to this day. And so whenever I was told something about money, whether it would be, oh, save your paycheck, oh, tithe your paycheck, like whatever it was from my family, but I didn't understand why I was being told the things I was being told. Like, if I was to get a paycheck from a retail job, like a high school job or whatever, and my mom would say to save it, great advice, Mom, honestly, but I didn't know what to save it for. I didn't know, I wanted to have fun with it. Like, why can't I could just spend it and get another paycheck? Like, I didn't really understand all that. It didn't really hit me until my honestly like my senior year of college, whenever I was saving for a ring for her, saving for these mission trips that I was going on, saving for just life after college. There was a lot that like kind of just hit me in the face like right away. I started living way more frivolously, to the point where I pretty much only ate ramen and pasta for like an entire 6 months, until I learned to live off of literally $50 a week. I learned that money can be stretched if you just think about what you're doing with it. All in all, learning to live frivolously, whether it was like forced because of my lack of money or if it was something that I truly decided to do, was it was a great decision, because I mean, still to this day we live very, very frugally. We don't really spend above what we need to. We celebrate, big wins whenever we have them, but for the most part, we live very below our means. I didn't really start thinking about money until I was kind of forced into it, but all of that and all of those steps that got me to there have, got us to here and are eventually going to get us somewhere else.
We just wanted to share these stories to show you that we're humans, and this was not something that came natural for us. Being good stewards of our finances was not something that came naturally. When we pursued God, when we pursued a healthy marriage, when we were leaning more on Jesus and what he spoke for our lives, that's when we understood that we had to be a good steward of our finances. Well, we hope you now understand that we are not perfect, and we've made some really good decisions and bad decisions in our finances over the years. We have just made a decision to be good stewards of every single thing that we're given. And so no matter where you're at, no matter what your finances look at, you can be a good steward of what God has given you. And we hope us sharing our stories has helped you.
Oh, oh.